Hi, Trina Wright here for day 4 of the 365 days of realizations. It's funny, I feel like there should be like a cutout and a fancy little screen that comes to play, and maybe we'll get there, but for now, just me. So, when I was tuning in and thinking about what to talk about today, I decided that I was going to shift gears and talk a little bit about parenting. Part of doing this for myself is to be a sort of example of what it means to have your feet on a spiritual path. And not just when you're meditating, not just when you're, in a spiritual conversation or a spiritual event, but what does it mean to live your life like that? To be sort of a disciple of self realization. And so, in that vein, I'm going to share a little bit about my own family and parenting. So, last night, when it was time for my 12-year-old to go to bed, she was having a hard time. She'd had a bad dream the night before, and some things had come up for her. And immediately, I noticed my own resistance because I was ready to move ahead with my night and move into meditation. And it's a funny little ongoing joke I have with myself that sometimes I argue with my kids about, like, no, you need to fill in the blank. You need to go do something, or I need to go to sleep so I can go meditate. And it's just a funny thing because clearly that's not the energy that I want to meditate with. And the whole point of meditation kind of gets negated if I'm coming into it with this irritance or offness. And yet it still remains something that I am gently leaning into and working on more and more. It doesn't arise all that much, but in particular with this child of mine, it does come up. I'm choosing to meditate around 8:30 at night, which does mean that, it's right at her bedtime. And just to give a tiny bit of the backstory, I think most of you know that the father of my children and my husband at the time passed away in an accident about 10 years ago. So, I get that there's some components for her that seem harder, and especially around her attachment with me and just that connection and sleeping and things like that. And all in all, it goes really well. But so anyway, last night, here we are. We'd had the whole day out. We'd had the whole day shopping. I'd stayed centered. We come back home. I'm looking forward to having some, meditation time to sort of come down from that more high, more outward experience that I'm not as used to, and immediately get hit with, no, I don't want you to do that. I want you to do this. And, instead of just surrendering and going right into it, that's not what Trina does. So luckily for me, I was able to stay largely in awareness and just sort of watch this play go on. That's what it feels like. It's so weird. It feels kind of like a play that's happening between my character, Trina, and her character, Maven. And I just have to some degree, trust that that's the way it's supposed to be because it's happening and there's no point in arguing with what is. So as it began to play out, I don't know, I just was able to surrender a little bit quicker and sort of open to this possibility of, like, so what? So let's just accept it. This is what it is. I'm not going to get out of it because my person wants to do something different. This is where I sit. This is the thing that I have been presented with. This is like God saying, okay, this is the thing I gave you. What are you going to do with it? And so am I going to spend my whole time being like, oh, I don't like it? Or am I going to find my way to do what I really want to do, what my intention for my life is, which is to be as empty as possible and be a pure channel of divine love or source or God. And of course, as we all know, it's slightly harder to do that when we have some history or some things that we're still working on with someone else, when it's someone we live close to and are with all the time, even though I am always looking at ways to empty from that. So here I am, I have this moment, I'm presented with this opportunity that I don't know how to explain it, but I had this just different feeling than had ever arisen before of, like, take a deep breath. And now what do you have to bring to this moment? Here she is. She's like open. She's like willing. She's engaging with me. She's asking. And without getting into a lot of the sort of drama in the background and the details, what it came down to is she was having some thoughts that she didn't like, and they seemed to be stuck. And she didn't know what to do about it, so she was looking to me to help soothe those stuck thoughts because, of course, I am her mom. And her idea of soothing was me laying in the bed with her. And I get that. And at the same time, I could feel this, like, surge come through me that was like, well, that's sort of a temporary solution. That's the, like, okay, here I am. You can't handle your stuff, so I'm going to lay with you. You're going to fall asleep, and then I'll probably end up sleeping here, and it'll be great. But it's not a long-term solution. It's just like the immediate solution. And sometimes that's where we're at. We're in that sort of state of like, it's not quite an emergency, but it's like an emergent state. It's like it needs attention right now. I need something to help me settle right now. I can't even think about some of the skills that I should have because this is such an emergency. So I sensed a little bit of that energy. So I was really took a few minutes with myself. I told her I was going to meditate. So that helped her quiet a bit. And then I just sat with myself for like 5 minutes and just did some equal count breathing and just did some come back into presence and just really like, okay, I know that there's things that I'm bringing into this moment and they're not serving me. So I'm just going to let all of that go. Here I am right here, right now. Apparently this is where God thinks that I need to be. So I'm going to be full in. So I did that. And then I was able to come back and be more present with her and to have a conversation about sort of helping her to just dial the energy down a little bit, like get her to take a few breaths, get her to sort of be a little more present, use a few words, tell me what some of the feelings that were going on. Because often what would happen is it would peak and she'd get quite emotional and that wouldn't really help the situation. And one of the things that I also, for some reason, just got really attuned to was that she needs to do some of this work. That yes, it sounds great to ask someone else to help you, to soothe you, to be understanding, to calm you. But ultimately, we're the only ones that can control what's going on inside of ourselves. And I really needed her to have some recognition of that so that we could move this energy. And so I just said that to her. I just said, I can do a lot of things. I can say a lot of things to you. I can do all kinds of things to reassure you. Part of what was going on for her was a little bit of worry about my safetyness or like something happening to me. And just, we'd had some death. Her great-grandfather died and some things like that in our family. And her worry of peaking about that and me being able to say, I need you to help me with this because I can't do this by myself. And some of it is you have to be willing. So when a thought comes, what can you do with the thought? Like, did you think the thought? Was the thought just there? And then do you owe the thought something? Do you have to go with the thought? Do you have to like make friends with it? Do you have to engage with it? So I was trying to be as funny as I could be and goofy about it. And I don't know that it really landed as well as I was hoping, but I was trying to get her to sort of see that, I've heard from my involvement with Ananda and Yogananda's teachings that we're not responsible for the first thought, so to speak, because there's so much going on, especially out there in the outer land. And there's so much momentum that we've created about a lot of things. And so a thought comes and okay, the thought's just there. I don't have to own the thought. I don't have to take responsibility. I don't have to feel bad about the thought. But now the second thought is my work. That's my responsibility. So what am I going to do with that next thought? So for many people, most of the time, and this is what was happening to her, is you just go with the next thought, which arose from the previous thought. It's not a better thought. It's often a worse thought. And then the next thought and the next thought and the next thought until you're in a frenzy because you've had so many worrisome thoughts or so many sort of off thoughts. So we played a little bit with that idea and that seemed to be helping a little bit, but still there was a little more amped upness than I wanted or than I thought was serving her in the moment. So the next thing that I thought, I don't know, just sort of came to me was to share with her that whenever you have a thought that doesn't feel good, that's why we have emotions. That's what they're there to tell us. When you have a thought that doesn't feel good, guess what it means? Simply, it just means the thought isn't true. Doesn't matter if you listen to Abraham Hicks, Bentino Massera, or just listen inwardly to your own sense of intuition. When you have a thought that doesn't feel good, it means the thought is not in alignment with the truth of who you are, which means it's usually not coming from a space of love and light. It's not coming from infinite bliss and joy. So easy sounding, not so easy to do, because remember, the thoughts have a little bit of a life of their own and they're kind of moving. And for so many of us, we've just believed that we're just being pulled around by our thoughts. She's 12. Of course, she's going to have some of that. But I did notice that she was paying attention. So she didn't do a lot of talking. And I continued to say, so what might be helpful? And I gave her lots of opportunities that she didn't really come up with anything. But I suggested for now, from the minimum, maybe we could just come up with a mantra, like something that you could just repeat to sort of keep the thoughts that are bothering you, because the thoughts were keeping her from being able to sleep, just to keep those thoughts in check. So a simple mantra like, everything's always working out for me, or I know I'm okay, or I have this energy that I can't see that's helping me in all different kinds of ways. and I can tune into that. I mean, that's a little more of a higher one, but basically to just like, I am okay. This will pass. This too shall pass. It's going to be all right. And also, I can do this. Like, I really tuned in and felt a sense that she doesn't understand her power. She doesn't understand what she's capable of. And she minimizes her own self in relationship to this. So, in essence, she lets the thoughts win. And I wouldn't want to set it up for her or anyone else for it to be like a battle, because it's not like that. It's more like, to me, it's like if you push against it in battle with it, the thought might just get bigger because now you're attending to it a lot. So it's not ignoring it and it's not pushing against it. It's kind of just being neutral, like finding peace with it so that the thought is just the thought. And it's hard. I get it. It's when the thoughts are things you don't want to have and they're worried, like, what if something happens to my mom, or where will I go and who will take care of me? And you can see how they have like literally a life of their own. One thought, and they just end up thought after thought after thought. And now you got this big mess. And that's what we had been dealing with. And this wasn't the first time. So I knew that part of it was another key piece that sort of came rushing in was to get ahead of it, meaning before it gets to that big place of so many things that have to be pulled out, how can she start to have awareness of that that's coming? And you know what's funny is I had a sense earlier yesterday, like in the car, and then when we got home, I don't know. I just had this sense that something was going to be hard for her, maybe because of so much energy, of also for her being out so much and just the shift in our structure and the way we usually do a day. And I pushed it to the side because I didn't want to have to take that on. I had a different plan, a different trajectory that I wanted to go to. And so what's so interesting is when we do that, we don't follow that nudge, follow that course. The nudge will just get, the knock on the door, the nudge will just get bigger. And now you have a full blown out thing that you have to deal with. So these were sort of the three things that I was working on with her. And it seemed to settle. And she fell asleep and I fell asleep. And at some point I woke back up again and made a decision to just stay in there with her because I felt like energetically that was probably what she was asking for. But in doing that, I kind of went into this meditative state and really felt with myself, this is my dharma right now. This is part of the responsibility that I have on this planet, whether I want to consider it that way or not. I'm free. I can put any meaning on it I want, but ultimately I'm her guide. I was like birthed her and I'm here with her. And I know that mothering for me has a big amount of growth in it. That's why I chose to have 4 kids and to be in this role. And so to be that guide means that there's some work that I need to do with myself. And then how am I going to guide her, help her, surround her, and direct her? So I would like to say that I then woke up today and did all that fabulously, but not so much. I'm working on it and it's a process. And it's an interesting thing with kids because if it was an adult, like someone that I was coaching or my partner or just anybody, that friend that's an adult, then you can sort of say to them, okay, this is what I noticed. This is what I would recommend. Or have you thought of trying this? Or would you be willing to do this with me? And it's different. But when it's a kid, there's this blended part of like, I'm resistant and I want to figure out how to do all these things myself. And I think I know. And then I don't want to do that because it sounds dumb. And there's just this stuff that sort of gets in the way. And so it changes the dynamic and it's slightly different. So in defense of myself, which is funny because it's just me talking to me, but is this idea that I don't want to come at it with her right straight for on. And I don't want her to feel bad about anything related to it. So I'm thinking about I'm sitting with it and just thinking about incremental ways that we can work on it and develop more of those skills of thinking about thoughts and stuff. And I know that it's something that would be served much better to work on it, like away from sleeping time, away from nighttime, like in a space where she's in a good mood and things are happy and we can just pick a thought and say, okay, so if you had this thought, how can we work with it? And the other piece that I will add into it is using the emotional scale. So if you have a lower thought that you don't like, that feels out of alignment, that's like a thought that's clearly not the truth, you feel bad when you have the thought, then one way to work with it is to think of a better thought and a better thought and a better thought. And Abraham Hicks' claim is that you can't go from the really disparate thought all the way up to the really high-flying, joyful thought because you have to incrementally go up. If you try to go from a really low thought to a really high thought too quickly, you won't be able to get there and you won't be able to sustain it. So these are the kind of things that I'm trying to weave into life with her, same as I did with my older daughter, and just be patient with it and myself in terms of like, I don't have to figure this out and change her. That's one of the key principles for me to remember in all of this, is this isn't about changing her. This isn't like she's perfect and beautiful. And from awareness, everything about her is exactly where it's supposed to be. Whatever it is she's got going on is the perfect thing that she needs to be working out. But at the same time, as someone that loves her and cares about her and knows that when she has better presence with herself, has more of an inner landscape, has more places to go when these things take her, and more of an ability to be in charge of the thoughts that she's thinking and be conscious about it, the better her life will be. And ultimately, all of my children know that I live by the law of attraction and that I believe it's true that what you put out is what you get back. So, since that's true, how do we really put some of our focus and energy into what we're putting out instead of constantly responding and reacting to what we're getting back? So, I thought that would be fun to just share a little piece of my life, how I try to bring these practices and this lifestyle into parenting. Interesting, because they are still so mired in Maya. They're still so caught up in the matrix and all the stuff that's going on there, and not even really necessarily consciously saying I'm choosing a spiritual path. I mean, they might have chose me as their mom, but um, yeah, trying to sort of bring these things in that sort of run counter to how many other people are doing it, but how I feel is the sort of best way to live a life, which I don't even want to say that because I think we're all free. It's just that since I'm put in this role of guiding her, it feels like that's relevant. So I appreciated the space to share this, and it's an ongoing thing, and I will probably do more videos about it and keep you posted. It's interesting about how we can blend our spiritual beingness into the rest of our life, into whether it's a job or your partnership or going out in the world and navigating the mall or parenting. I think that's the key thing, is how do we still bring those things into every aspect of our life. So have a wonderful evening, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.